Hello everybody and welcome back to another Oscar prediction video where today I will be taking a look at the category of Best Supporting Actor. So first of all, I'm aware that this video is going out a little bit later than it normally would. Yesterday was much more hectic than I was expecting it to be, and I ended up not having the time I needed to record a video. But I'm recording this now, you're getting it now, and tomorrow's video is going to come out at the regularly scheduled time. So, with that being said, supporting actor, this is the first acting category that I'm covering. Usually there's one acting category where all of the precursors line up and there's a pretty clear answer. And so far, that seems to be the case this year. This is the last video that's being recorded prior to the BAFTA winners, so I don't actually know if BAFTAs are going to throw us for a loop. They very easily could. On the surface, this category seems pretty easy to call, but there is this nagging feeling in my head that something could happen that could switch up the status quo. But as of right now, I feel pretty confident, so I'm going to jump right in. Fifth most likely to win is Jeremy Strong for The Apprentice. So this is Jeremy Strong's first Oscar nomination. He has been a hard-working actor for a long time now, but recently, after the success of, Succession, he's really popping off and becoming a big star. And because of this movie and this performance, he's playing Roy Cohn, a real-life person who was very infamous, although perhaps not as infamous as who Sebastian Stan is playing. And that performance has gotten a lot of critical lauding, there was a lot of speculation early on about whether he would get nominated, whether the film itself would hit, because obviously for a lot of Oscar voters, it's still very, very difficult to actually press play on the thing. But he did make it through in the end, and I do think he's the least likely to win. I was going to say least likely because his movie's not in Best Picture, but then I remember there's technically one other person whose movie is not in Best Picture, and one other person who, ironically, was also in Succession and also faced a lot of TV success from that show. I think the real reason why I'm not predicting Jeremy Strong to win is because he has the least precursor support. He didn't get a ton of nominations from a lot of major guilds, and the movie itself, I think, even among those who see it, are probably more likely to support Stan than Strong. So, while I think this is a solid performance, and I'm really happy that he got in here, I don't think he has a very realistic shot at winning. Fourth most likely to win is Yura Borisov for Anora. So first and foremost, I want to apologize because I've always been calling him Borisov, and a lot of other people have called him Borisov, but as was pronounced in the Oscar nomination announcement, the name is Borisov. Now, what makes this interesting is that when the movie initially had its premiere at Cannes, a lot of people were highlighting Mark Eidelstein as the likely supporting actor contender from the movie, and it sort of took a while for people to realize that Borisov was the more likely contender, because at the beginning of the movie, the screenplay makes it seem like this character is not going to be that important, that he's just there to be a thug to help out with the main antagonists. And then as the film goes on, he gradually reveals more and more humanity to him, and by the end, the final few scenes of the movie are just him and Mikey Madison. And it's largely because of him that the movie ends on the note that it does, which, even though I wasn't a big fan of the movie as a whole, as I've stated in the past, I do really respect Borisov's performance, and I do understand why he got this nomination. Now, I think the main reason why he won't win is because he's such an unknown name in the United States. He's done a few things in Russia, but this is his first big American breakthrough role, and the performance, while good, is very subtle a lot of the time, so I don't think it's going to be the sort of thing that really catches a lot of voters' attention. Granted, the movie is potentially in a really good position to win Best Picture, but I somehow don't see Borisov going all the way along with that. I think Borisov is, of all the movie's prospects, Borisov is one of the least likely to actually win in his respective category. Third most likely to win is Guy Pearce for The Brutalist. So this Guy Pearce is on his very first Oscar nomination, which is kind of surprising. This is one of those people where it's like, ooh, he really hasn't been nominated before because he's done such great work in movies like L.A. Confidential and Memento. But no, this is his first Oscar nomination, and it is a very well-deserved one, playing the villainous character in this film and doing a great job of being so hateable and yet early on very compelling. And it made a lot of sense initially why a lot of people were predicting Guy Pearce to win, because he's a very established actor who gives a very showy performance in this film. And yet, I think, personally, my chances of actually predicting him went away when he missed out on a SAG nomination. And I still don't quite understand how that happened, because the movie did pretty okay at every other branch, but for whatever reason, SAG chose not to nominate him. And so far, he hasn't really won any of the major precursors, despite him seeming like a favorite early on. And the other thing, too, I know that there used to be a time where villains got rewarded in supporting actor pretty regularly, with Heath Ledger, Javier Bardem, Christoph Waltz, but recently they've been shying away from that. A lot of the more recent winning performances are for much more likable characters, and maybe there's a bit of a hurdle that has to be overcome when you're voting for an actor who's giving such a detestable performance. So even though it's a very, very strong performance and a very strong movie, I ultimately don't think he's going to go all the way in the end. Second most likely to win is Edward Norton in A Complete Unknown. So this is interesting now, because Edward Norton, first of all, is the only one of these actors that you can really argue is overdue for awards attention. He's received 4 Oscar nominations in the past, and he's on his 4th nomination now, for Primal Fear, American History X, and Birdman. So he's well respected in the past, has never actually won an Oscar, and this could be seen as an overdue opportunity. Now, granted, Norton does have a bit of a reputation of being unpleasant to work with, which might hurt his chances, but in this movie, he's playing a character unlike a lot of the roles he usually plays. He's playing a very calm, relaxed, down-to-earth kind of person. And maybe some voters might think that this signals a new turn in Norton's career, and that he's going to maybe tone it down with some of the intensity that he's shown behind the scenes in some other roles. But the real reason why I think Norton could be our upset is because Oscar voters love A Complete Unknown. This movie got 8 nominations, which was so much more than I was expecting it to get. It got into director, which was absolutely shocking. And Norton, I don't know what this movie can win. The most obvious prospect would be for Chalamet, but I somehow doubt that can happen. A win for sound would be possible, and I do think a win for Norton would be possible. But I don't want to fall into the trap of just saying, oh, just because this movie has a bunch of nominations, it's automatically going to win stuff, because we've been proven wrong before. I do think Norton has a bunch of fans and a bunch of supporters, but he also has people who have heard all those stories about him, his behavior off camera, and maybe are not going to be too inclined to give him an award. And the performance itself, while solid, I don't know if it actually stands out enough for them to want to give him the win. And so I ultimately do have him at number 2, and the person I have at number 1 most likely to win is Kieran Culkin for A Real Pain. So, as of this recording, Kieran Culkin has pretty much swept the precursors, winning a Golden Globe and Critics' Choice, and we will see if BAFTA goes in a different direction. But what's so telling is that A Real Pain is a movie that for a while a lot of us just assumed would be nominated for Best Picture, and it ultimately missed that nomination. Now, the last time somebody won Best Supporting Actor specifically without a Best Picture nomination was Christopher Plummer for Beginners back in 2011. And Plummer had this narrative of being a veteran who was in the industry for a very long time and was finally getting rewarded. Culkin is certainly a well-liked actor, especially coming off of his Emmy win for Succession, but he's not someone who's been a huge star for a long time. Obviously, he was a child actor, but in those days he was kind of overshadowed by his brother. And so Culkin is definitely giving a good performance in the film, and a very memorable performance in the film, What irks me so much is that this is so transparently a lead performance. And I understand that Oscar voters are forever going to be unlikely to consider two actors of the same gender to be nominated alongside each other, and they always have to put one of them in supporting so that they don't cancel each other out. I get that, but here's what's so frustrating. The movie is about Culkin's character. Even though Jesse Eisenberg technically has more screen time by a couple of minutes, I would sooner make the argument that Eisenberg is more supporting than Culkin is, just because Culkin is the center of the narrative, much like in Emilia Perez, where Saldana may have more screen time than Gascon, but Gascon is who the movie is ultimately about. There's literally only one scene in A Real Pain that Culkin is not in, and in that scene, the characters are talking about him. So it's absolutely ridiculous to call this a supporting performance. If he had been campaigned in lead actor, he would have gotten the nomination. I feel quite certain of that, but he wouldn't have won. And so this is just a tactic to get him to win. And the thing is, I've debated this for a while. It's why I didn't immediately come out with a supporting actor video. I was like, could there still be a world where there is an upset? But Guy Pearce, Edward Norton, and even Yuri Borisov all make a compelling case of why they could take votes away from Culkin. And so even if somebody else takes it at BAFTA, I still think this is going to be Culkin's in the end, because the character is very memorable, the actor is very likable, the movie is well-liked. Even if it just missed Best Picture, it was probably around 11 or 12. It just all seems to make sense to me. Even if it is a little bit of a swing to predict someone to win when the movie is not in picture. Like, we have seen people win acting Oscars for movies that aren't in picture. We've seen, like, Brendan Fraser, Jessica Chastain, and in the supporting categories, Regina King was maybe the most recent example. So it does happen if the performance is really lauded. And I do think this performance is lauded enough that it's going to win. And I don't think any of the competition on their own is strong enough to beat Culkin. So thank you very much for watching. This is usually the part of the video where I would tell you what the next video is going to be. However, I'm still kind of trying to figure that out. Let me wait until after the BAFTA Awards, and hopefully BAFTA is going to clear up a few categories. So after the BAFTA, tomorrow you will get a surprise video. How's that? See you then.